Hi. How are you doing? Are you feeling ready? I will do the shifts. Okay. Oh, we are live already. Yes. Okay. All right. Good morning. This is Friday, March 20th. And this is Senate Natural Resources and Energy. And we are going to start the morning with Leslie Giroux, who's from a professor at UVM. And also a climate geologist, is that fair to say? And so I should just preface this by saying, so I met Professor Giroux at an event this past summer, talking about drought. And as you remember, I know it feels perhaps far away at this point, but that we experienced some really catastrophic droughts over the summer. And so this is an area that Professor has a lot of thoughts on and data and research. So for our own education, thought it'd be great to have you in. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I've actually never been in this room before, so it's really nice to see all various parts of the state. And thank you for that warm welcome. What I'm going to try to do is to maybe sort of set the stage for the droughts that took place last year and tell you that we're still in a drought right now, right? And so some of the things we need to think about and learn about so we could pre-stage or really keep in mind all of our workouts and all of our various needs that are going on right now, right? So the droughts that we saw back in 2025, the ones that accelerated from August all the way through to the end of the year, they actually started the year before. So that was in 2024. So if we think about that and we think about the fact that we are still in a drought right now, we're actually in a 3-year drought, if you really put it into context. So tell me if you see my mouse move. But you see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have to squint a little bit. Yeah. Right. So you're seeing a map of Vermont. This is from the US Geological Survey. And one of the ways that we know that this is a really long-term drought, which is why it's facing much attention, is they monitor wells across the state. There are a few of them. And what they're looking at is how deep or how shallow the wells are. And so back in 2024, when they were making these measurements, you see these little red triangles here? That means that those were the absolute lowest on record for that particular well. And it goes all the way back to September 2024, and it continues into 2025. So if you bring up 2025, we're still in setting records at that particular well, and you see it's on the eastern side of the state. That's going to become important as we talk a little bit more about this. We had a little bit of recovery coming into the summer, but then we went back into setting records, right? So that's how we know that groundwater in particular is of great concern to us, right? And so when we think about all the constituents that contacted you and were asking about assistance because the wells have been dry and going into the winter, this is part of the reason why it's a long-term thing of looking here. So the droughts that we saw last year were historic in terms of lowest values ever, but historic in terms of the type of drought that we also experienced. We haven't seen that particular type of drought before. And so again, it's another reason why we need to kind of pay particular attention to what's going on. It was so historic that it made news, national news. So NASA actually looks at events over time. And back in September, this was the image of the day. So they picked one image to highlight, and the droughts across the entire Northeast were that image that they highlighted because of how catastrophic the dryness was. So the way that you're going to see this, everything I show you, blue means wet, and brown and orange just mean dry, and really, really dry. So if you see values like this, it means that the soil is so dry it had between 0 and 2% of water in the soil. Now, have you ever seen soil looks like that? It kind of crumbles in your hand, doesn't hold anything, the plants, don't grow anymore. And so think about that when we were talking about severe conditions here. So one of the things we need to kind of remember about droughts is droughts have occurred in the past, they're occurring now, and they will continue to occur in Vermont because every place on earth experiences droughts. It just looks a little bit different, right? So we don't have the droughts that look like other places like parts of Oklahoma, for example, but our droughts are equally severe across here as Vermonter's because they affect different sectors from tourism all the way to agriculture, to human health, and so on. So here's how I can say the droughts have occurred in the past and will continue to occur because we can look at these measurements through time. So we're starting with 1895 on the left here, and going all the way to 2025 on the right. And what this is showing you is an index that tells you how dry and how long that goes on for. So again, remember I said, anytime you see browns and oranges, it means dry. And then blues and greens mean that we're wet. So back in the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, 1960s, we tended to be more of a drought-prone state. So if I were briefing the committee back then, we wouldn't be talking about floods, we'd be talking about droughts, and droughts lasted for years, right? And then about 1917, there was a switch that occurred in the whole system, and we started becoming wetter, right? So keeping that in mind, so yes, we do have a lot of moisture, yes, we do have a lot of floods, but we're still getting droughts, right? And so that's why we still need to kind of keep an eye out for understanding how the droughts across the state are playing out. So I just zoomed into the last 20 years or so, and what you see across here are various times, so from 2000 all the way back to the end of 2021, when we have been in the drought, right? And so you can see things like the 2012 droughts in here, 2016 drought, 2020, and then here we are in 2025, right? When we dark in red, the more severe it is. All right, so this particular index, this particular product that I'm showing you is something called the US Drought Monitor. And that gets put together every week. So the latest one got released yesterday. And the colors mean something important. So when you're now starting off with drought, it's the lowest value here, so 0. And then as you increase in the severity and the intensity of the drought, those numbers get larger and larger. So what they've done, they being the National Drought Mitigation Center, is they looked at all the droughts that we've had in Vermont and what happened at each level of severity. So when we're now starting off with things like crops being stunted, and by the time you get up to really, really severe drought, that's when we see things like Christmas tree farms being affected. So we're looking at where we are and what can we sort of compare it to as a result. So the drought last year started around August and then ramped up from there. And what we are looking at is probably the time when it was the most severe. And this is where we saw these large red long across here, which say extreme drought. And pretty much the entire state was in drought, but the central part of the state and the eastern part of the state were the most severe. So then, red is what you're looking for, brown is what you're looking for. So you see that everybody needs to be concerned about drought because everybody was experiencing drought back in September into October of last year itself. So the type of drought that we were in and why we need to pay attention now is, you know about flash flooding, right? Flash flooding that, rapid onset starts in about 6 hours. Well, we're now seeing a type of drought called flash drought. And what flash drought is it starts really quickly. So it started in late August. And by the end of August into September, we had ramped up so much that everything started to dry out rapidly, like so a couple weeks. And because we haven't seen so many of those before, that's what sort of caught us off guard because we're like, what's going on? This is going to end really soon. And when it didn't, you're like, oh, so this is different. Oh, what are we going to do? Right? So the flash drought is something that we need to get on everybody's radar, right? So that we're not getting caught again in that particular situation. So it started in July. And we had a relatively wet May, which gave us a little bit of a cushion, but then the spigot shut off in August. And August was actually the driest August since 1895. And that alone should sort of like perk your ears up, because if you go from wet to dry like that, then things dry out really, really quickly. And when the temperatures are really high, it causes it to dry out even more, right? So you get a lot of loss from the soil, you get a lot of loss from the trees and so on. And so everything just really, really ramps up from there, right? So all this was at a particular time frame in there as one of the reasons why we saw that last drought. So remember how I said brown is bad? Okay, do you see what Vermont looks like? So this was September, this was the end of September. And what you're seeing is these soils pretty much all the way across the entire state were in that less than 5% of moisture. So that really, really bone dry stuff, right? And think about this is the time when we're getting into harvesting. So this is not the best time to see this type of stuff. So the timing was also important to hear. So we're looking at that. And then this is one of those NASA maps that show you how quickly we went from blues, which is too much, to browns, which is like almost completely bone dry. So I like using this type of stuff, and I use it every week that we had the drought task force activated, because it gave us a good sense who was drying out in the last 6 days, in the last 7 days, right? So it's a really, really helpful tool to help us kind of see that and understand what's going on. So this is what bone dry looks like. So this is from the 2016 drought. And do you know the San Mazo stand in Colchester? Right, you get on there, maybe done berry picking or so on. So this is what it looked like in 2016, when we were also in a severe drought. It took a while to develop, but you had the same sort of impacts in terms of really, really bone dry. I remember walking on this, and the dust was just kind of like going up into the air because there's no moisture in the ground itself. So that's one thing in here. And when I knew that we were going into a drought and we needed to kind of pay attention, started taking pictures of this field in South Burlington. So this is what it looked like at the end of August. So trying to do some haying here, and as the tractor's going along, all of that stuff just like because of how dry it was, right? So I did some more driving around and looked at some of the ponds on the golf courses, because again, when you're in a drought, the ponds usually have that pond scum, right? So that's another way, if you're moving along, like, oh, okay, so there's some problems going on with that. And going to Forest Parks and Recreation in Essex Junction, they have some high alerts, right? Because incidents or the potential for wildfires to occur. So wildfires are something that we pay attention to in droughts, particularly because when things start to dry out, then it doesn't take too much for burn stuff to kick in. And so we saw that in place, not just in the flurry, but also during this drought itself. And so again, if you had some more national products across the entire Northeast, there was this really, really high risk, significant risk for us to have forest fires. So much so that on October 12th, we had a red flag day. And a red flag day means the National Weather Service puts out an alert saying, don't burn, take precautions, particularly because anything like a dropped match, dropped cigarette, actually spark a really, really severe forest fire. So we had that in October. And we actually had staging, pre-staging, like helicopters that are able to fly in and assist with fire relief. And we actually had to use this in the other western part of the state itself. So it's again one of those things that we're paying attention to.
It's a rough area, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so it's like, how many helicopters do we have? Are they pre-staged in the right places? How quickly can they get to the site in question?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things, again, as we're moving forward, we need to kind of keep on our radar. Now, if all of the lakes and streams are drawing down, that means all of the water that flows westward into Lake Champlain is going to be less. Okay? So what you're looking at here is, do you know where the echo is? Right, there's an actual gauging station right outside the echo, kind of like where the Spirit of Ethan Island docks. Like, so if you know where that area is, that's where the gauging station is. And so they've been taking heights of the lake over time at that site. So it's a nice continuous spread that you're looking at. And so what this is showing you is the heights of Lake Champlain over the course of the entire year. So it starts off in January, it goes to December here. This is the highest the lake has been, right? So this blue line is the highest the lake has ever been. So think about Irene, think about, you know, the first 2023, some of these peaks we've set then. And this is the lowest the lake has ever been. So this is the green line here. And when I say lowest, I mean so low you can actually walk out, you know, some of the islands, right? And you've seen those pictures, right? So walking out to the rocks, walking out to the islands. That's
Now it's very,
pardon?
now it's very, it's very.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this middle line here, this purplish line is the average value. And then the red line is what was happening in 2025. So you see how we started right out. How we were getting close to some really concerning levels in here, right? Almost hitting those lowest values. Just for context, when we were here, like just above this line, just before Irene, I was working with the program emergency management to do a drought disaster declaration because the impacts are so severe. So this drought was even worse, right? So even worse than just before Irene back in 2011. So when you look at that, when was the last thing we saw was back in 1941. So again, that gives us a sense of how far back in time as we have to go to actually see how low the lake was. Okay. Now, when lake drops, the temperature goes up, right? So just like in ponds, when the water level goes down, the water actually keeps up. And so on this thing here, so the 30th of November, we actually celebrate that. Well, how the lake goes, right? So again, that's another one of those markers that we're looking at here to see why are we paying attention, right? Because again, it will trigger sort of algal blooms and so forth. Okay. So if you wanted to try and see how fast the lake dropped, one of my colleagues at the National Weather Service takes my weather kind of landscapes class on Wednesday and showed me this slide. I'm borrowing that just a moment on time, right? And so here, this line, this blue line here shows you how the lake levels dropped. See that precipitous drop? So it's like a cliff, right? So it dropped, and as it was dropping, when the temperature is still high, so lots of evaporation. So by the time we got to August, that's when we really saw a lot of those really severe conditions in place. So I love to take pictures to set context. So I went down to the Burlington docks, walking around. All of the ramps are up here. All of the boats are down here. Folks can't get into their craft because there's too much of a drop. And you're also seeing all of that fog when we do greenhouse. So that's a big the waterfront, right? If you look at the DC side, I'll go back to your tracker. You see, excuse me, you'll see it's not just the Burlington area that we'll pay attention to. So again, looking for red values, so it's showing where they have big alerts were. So it wasn't just in the Burlington area, like down in Charlotte, up at St. Albans, and also Lake Mentor, right? So all of those places where the water levels dropped and temperatures went up, we started seeing all that green algae in place. So I was getting an interview with Alex at the St. Albans Messenger, and I said, if you happen to be doing this story, go and check and see how far the lake up is as we see it from shore. So here are my pictures in 2016, and here are Alex's pictures last year. My pictures would have been here, right? So 2016 would have been here. This is 2025. So again, another very visual way of seeing how dramatic and historic last year's drought. So sticking with the theme of water, my class did a project with the town of Richmond because we wanted to see how can we create some materials for the residents of Richmond to learn about drought and floods. So including these little pamphlets and understanding of what floods and droughts look like for the town of Richmond. And I'm actually going to drop off some of those posters for the planning here today. And what the interesting part is that this is what you saw in September. And I don't know if you're familiar with the bridge on Bridge Street in Richmond. If you've driven across there, the water was about 10 to 20 feet lower than during the floods of 2023. So it was so low that you see all these shows, the beds, when you're going to the river itself, which tells you again how much of a drop down this is. So water, where is it? On the surface, but also on the groundwater. So you start seeing wells running out, and running dry and not having enough access to wells because everybody needed wells to be dug or to be deeper. But we had more demand than there was supply. So this is one of those ongoing concerns. And one thing that is important to kind of look at was how much rain, because everybody kept asking me this, how much rain should fall when it needs it to fall for us to kind of come out. Well, so back in September, we needed to have as much as 11 inches of rain fall and then make its way down through the ground to get to the ground water to actually get us out to the drought. So think about that. That's a lot of water, right? And it needs to like replenish all those layers before it gets down to the ground or some aquifers to actually bring us out of the drought itself. So if you're feeling like this right now, right, this whiplash, we're going from floods to droughts and back and forth, high temperatures, low temperatures, there's ice outside, there's snow, all of that stuff going on. Yes, because that's part of like the story of Vermont itself. So there's that shot of the bridge here. And I kept going back because I wanted to see people coming out of the drought, right? And so going back, yes, we started to get rainfall, yes, we started to come out of the drought. And so that's a good sign in terms of that particular piece. On the eastern side of the state, conditions were still relatively second. And so thinking about driving from Lake Worry, right where we were, coming along in East Barn, where you can see a lot of the rocks that are still present in the streams themselves because the streams haven't fully come up. So floods and droughts, part of our history in here. And one thing that is also part of the history is that we can go from floods to droughts, droughts to floods in a couple of weeks. So we saw that last year. We also saw that in the next 27%. So as we're looking at all of these water pieces, again, by now you should be saying along with me, red is bad because it means it's absolute lowest ever, right? And so we're seeing a lot of those conditions across the North Country. It's going to look like last week. So this is why there's hope for news, because last week now we're seeing views, which mean that we're getting a replenishment of the water in various stream systems across the state. So this is a hopeful sign that we're starting to turn the corner. So how do we work with this? How do we try to respond to the ongoing drought situation that we're in? Which droughts are we talking about? Is it how much rain or how much snow we get, which is meteorological drought? Is our soil still dry? Is it our groundwater values still low? Or has the economic impact kicked in because we weren't able to grow stuff, or we had to tap into feed supplies, or pumpkins may not have been so large, right? That's the socioeconomic part that we need to look at. So the answer, of course, is which one are we talking about tonight? So this is from yesterday. And yesterday, we're still seeing drought conditions across pretty much most of the state here, right? So even though we've been getting snow, this is going to surprise you. Even though we got all that snow, January and February were still the 9th driest January and February since these years. Wow.
That surprised me.
I know. So,
No melt,
pardon?
no melt, all snow stuck around.
Right, and so
Yeah.
it's starting to melt now.
Yeah.
And so there's that lag into how we come out of that, right? So that's part of the understanding of this as a system. So as we think about this, if I were giving this testimony last week, we're gonna freezing rain and snow, we had temperature extremes, we had some flooding, we had ice jams all going on at the same time. And that's that whiplash, right? And we kind of hold this up here and make sense of it and prepare for it. So there's that. And we have these multiple things going on at the same time, which makes it a little bit more challenging. Right? So it's not just one that you're focusing on, it's all of these things going on at the same time, because it means that there's a challenge of where you put your resources. So, Vermonters, cope with the various challenges that we're experiencing. So, just a quick little shot from like 2023, when we were focusing on the floods, we also had all our so it makes it challenging to do the messaging when you've got 2 or 3 different hazards going on, and you have to warn folks about health and air quality at the same time as you're cleaning up. Right, so holding this in at the same time is always really challenging. So one thing I'm gonna kind of leave you with is the Vermont kind of action plan, because it was my privilege to spearhead the writing of the climate change chapter. I did bring a few copies in here to leave all of this stuff with you, so that you can share it around the committee. Because that's where a lot of this stuff is actually housed, the droughts and the floods and the moisture extremes, the temperature extremes, they're all kind of in here if you wanted to take a closer look. If you are working with your constituents and they are telling you more and more what the drought is to experiencing, I would invite you to invite them to actually kind of put some of that information in this conditions monitoring observatory, because again, it allows folks who live in an area for like 10, 15, 20, 30 years to upload their pictures, to upload their observations, and that's gonna help all of us who deal with drought or floods to actually see what's going on in all corners of the state, right? So drought monitoring, condition monitoring observatory, to help get that message across.
And is that in your? Is the link to this in your testimony? Do we have this testimony?
I am not sure if it's already captured, but I'm more than happy to
Okay,
make everything big.
okay, yeah, it would be helpful to get the link
Absolutely.
to share with us.
That would be awesome.
Okay,
That would be awesome. Thank you in advance for that.
sure.
So the other piece is, with my colleagues at Cornell, I'm working to stage a drought dashboard that would have all of this information, including a direct link to information monitoring tools, but it's not online right now because my website is not online, still being rebuilt. But this is the division for it, to have something that is like a mapping phase, so that you can actually come in and see like where you are and be able to drill down and see what drought looks like in your neck. So you do not have to rely on a big wall, but if you want to be able to actually get down and take a look. So one thing that I wanted to kind of also put on your radar is state climatologist of South Carolina has the sort of mandate to do droughts in her state, because she is a state employee, so she's in the Department of Natural Resources. And about 30 years ago, they created this Drought Response Act that allows them to bring in triggers of when this happens. This legislation needs to be in place, and these ordinances kick in, and all these various pieces. So it's a really well-oiled machine. And once you get to certain levels of drought, you can this type of permitting, so forth, right? So South Carolina and the Drought Response Act, really happy to share the direct link for this if you wanted to kind of take a closer look to see what that would store or not. Right?
That'd be great.
Yeah, because they have to go between hurricanes and droughts, right? And so we have to go between floods and air quality and droughts. So not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. We can sort of have a lot of lessons learned. I can reach out to Dr. Hope Gazelle, my colleague, if you want to chat with her, if you want to chat with a bunch of us, state climatologists, happy to do that as well, so that we can actually get some of these, don't do that, let's do this instead. Okay, so we're still in draft right now. My concern is that this is gonna continue because we're still not out of it yet. So how do we kind of think ahead for next few months, next year, and so on? And so one of the things that I'm working on is to create a all hazard, all state, all sector drought plan, building off of South Carolina and Iowa, and Massachusetts, that will allow you to see what these triggers are. So that when we go into a drought, come out of the drought, and so on, And how do we, you've already said it should be sharing some of these resources, how do we start building that culture of see something, so the ongoing monitoring and leveraging a lot of resources we have as a state, so state agencies, making sure that everybody knows and everybody has the information, so that ongoing communication to the public is important. So I'm gonna leave you with this. I'm gonna leave it up because I know that folks online who are probably getting their phones up right now and scanning that QR code. I've learned to do this here, get that QR code up there, because what this will link you to is a story map that the students in my climatology and natural causes class created last fall that puts together what we know for droughts in the state of Vermont. And they have this wonderful little poster that runs along with it. So I'm also believe a lot of these orange and red, right? Because it takes you through the various droughts that we've had and the timeline for when heat shows up. So again, communication, because knowledge is. So I believe with that, I'd like to end my testimony and thank you for the opportunity, Chair, all of the committee members here present to have had the chance to share a little bit of what I've been doing in terms of drought conditions across the state. So thank you.
Super, thank you so much. Yes, go
I
ahead.
have questions. Thank you. That was really, really interesting and you're a great presenter. Tell your professor.
Everybody always says that.
Yeah, you're very engaging. So I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District. We didn't get to introduce ourselves, but I have a lot of agricultural land in my district, so I know that many farmers were impacted severely by the droughts. Especially livestock farmers who couldn't produce hay and crops to feed their livestock. But my question, a lot of the work you do depends on federal data and with the cuts and everything that's going on there, are you still able to access the kind of data that you need?
I am actually.
Oh, wow, that's
I
good.
am. There's a lot of the sources of data and the methods that are used are sort of in the public domain.
Okay,
So when I can show you things from yesterday or today,
yeah,
it's because they're so accessible. The other piece is that there's a really close relationship between some of those federal entities and the National Drought Mitigation Center, which is housed at the University of Nebraska. And so there's a really close knit
yeah,
community.
it's
drought
sort of
community.
a little insulated from what's happening.
Well, I would say more sharing the knowledge, sharing
Yeah.
the wealth, sharing the expertise, so that everybody who needs to have data information and interpretation has that.
Mhm,
And a lot of state climatologists are actually drought experts as well.
mhm,
And so they know the conditions on the ground in the local part of a three-tiered system,
mhm.
national level, regional level, and then local levels where the state climatologists sit. And so can work closely with federal agencies within the borders, so like National Weather Service here in Burlington, USGS here in Burlington, in partnership with state agencies to make sure we're getting that cohesive grade across the board and knowing exactly what's going on in various parts of the state. So
Okay, that's good to hear.
mhm.
And I was gonna ask you what you thought we should do to prepare. We've done a lot of flood work planning. Chair and I were involved in several major bills about how to respond to floods and then get a drought. And I think, well, I was really surprised. I was like, how can we possibly be getting drought? But we should look at the South Carolina legislation, and if you have other recommendations for things that we should do, that would be great.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to continue providing data, information, anything else that you need to actually put this in place. Because I think once we get that drought plan, it needs some the input from all state of Vermont,
Yeah.
right? It needs some input in what's the latest. And I think what we don't have right now is a clear understanding of what a flash drought looks like in the state
Yeah,
and what ongoing conditions from a vegetation perspective would
Yeah.
see, so that you can get the mechanisms in place.
yeah, flash drought, is something I never heard of before.
What is that?
Thank you.
Also, want to thank you, that was fabulous. I'm deepening the word graphs better. So makes me very happy. But so you referenced 1895 a couple of times. Is that because 1895 was a particularly bad year, or is that because that's when the data starts?
The latter. So
Okay.
climatologists have the ability to use the records they have going all the way back to when they are most consistent. And so NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, their records consistently start in 1895. And so for us to always get a long-term perspective, we use that. If you're looking at NASA data, those start in 1880. So again, we have that 100+ year. So if you only look at last 2 or 3 years, you get one interpretation. If you look at 50 years, different interpretation. 120 years, then you're like, no, that's when you really see where things fit. Then you put them into context.
And then, at the time that we met over the summer, we were still in it. And you were looking for, because people's wells were drying up and you had been looking for, like, if we knew folks who were experiencing dry wells, that was useful information for you in the future. And maybe this gets to the, the potential future of like, if we look at what South Carolina did, if there's some kind of build out as to how Vermont should respond to droughts, flash droughts, etc., that there might be some kind of system, like I'm imagining some reporting system to say, yeah, my well ran dry here. Which could be useful in terms of like, how do we get resources to people, but also to be able to map what is happening literally on premise.
And so that's a excellent framing, because we have part of that right now. So at the Department of Environmental Conservation, but also in the Department of Health, there are mechanisms for reporting when wells run dry, or running dry, or coming back online. And there are map tools that will show you, broadly speaking, so protecting privacy, broadly speaking, where those wells are running dry. We take it to the next level, which is to integrate all of that information with other aspects. So like, what else is going on with the streams? What else is going on with the lakes in that region? Because we need to understand what's on the bottom, side to side, where those dryouts are occurring, what's the why. The better we can pinpoint the drying, whatever the drying is, whether it's your trees, your farm, the lake in your backyard. The more we can pinpoint those, the more we can get that information to the National Drought Mitigation Center, the better we're able to draw the lines of where drought is across the state. And the better we do that, it can then trigger stuff like USDA monies, right? So if we don't know where things are drying out, we draw incorrect lines and we don't get USDA trigger. So that's, again, it's a win-win-win for everybody. So that's why I keep saying, if you see something, see something. Right? Because we're all in this together. Everybody's affected by drought. And so we need to report every single thing. Looking outside the window right now, yeah, we got some stress still going on out there, right? So yeah, when you finish with the community meeting today, once you see some pictures, upload them to Seymour. So then you're modeling what you're trying to do here with building that culture, reporting about everything that's going on this. See.
Well, thank you so much. Any other questions, comments? Thank you again, really appreciate it. Yeah, sure. Okay, and so we're gonna switch gears to hear from Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. This year we have a draft amendment that does reference you all. So we're looking at this point at draft 3.2 of an amendment to this 328. And so okay, we'll get you a great minute. Yeah, no worries. No. Hey, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. For the record, Gus Sealer, Executive Director, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, he's our Policy Director, Colin Major. I understand we'll come back next week to give an update on the board's larger work. The amendment looks fine to us. So that's the quick and the dirty on this. If you'd like an update right now on the farm housing program that we're operating, I can give it to you. That would be helpful.
I think that would be interesting. It would be cool if you're prepared to do.
Yeah, sure. And so just by way of background, in the fall of 2020, I think we began to look at the issue of farm urban housing and commissioned a study by a group called Development Cycles and by a consultant named John Ryan. There had been a lot of preceding work led by Dr. Dan Baker at the Center for Rural Studies, by Michael Justice, and the Bridges for Health Project, and some great advocacy from them, and particularly one person, Ernest Foster Caswell,
Yes,
local.
he's the one who wants the report updated, appreciate it.
And what we learned from that report, a few salient facts that I went over last night. Was there a little over 20,000 people working in agriculture, mostly farmers and farm family members. About 8,500 people who were not family members, 2,000 of which lived on farms, and what the Bridges for Health report suggested was that 1/3 of them felt stressed by their housing conditions. For a variety of different reasons that led to habitability, quality, and so we were in an atmosphere where lots of funding was available in the pandemic era. We actually stood up programs with recovery residences and housing people, intellectual development disabilities, with public state shelter capacity. And as a result of John's report, we put out an RFP asking for somebody to operate a program for the farm community from the Champlain Housing Trust. Responded and was the best application we got. They, in conjunction with EVM and with one of their competitors, which is the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, have been at the business of repairing housing and in some cases replacing housing. The structure of the program basically is for repair projects, you get a $30,000 loan that is forgivable over 10 years. And for a replacement project, you can get a $120,000 loan with $30,000 forgivable. Program so far has served I think it's 284 workers in the repair program and another 30 in the replacement program. There is more demand right now for the replacement program than the repair program, and we will be happy to update evaluate they are working in this area and to report some of the amendment passes.
Super, yes, nice.
Is that information on our website that you just told us? That's important. Or is on your website?
The report from 2020-21 is located somewhere that the legislature has, but I don't know exactly where. You know where to.
Yeah, it's the Ag Committee, House Ag. Yeah, it's on the legislative reports page. I found it when I was working on this, but we can probably repost it to our SNP.
I've got a bunch of people.
It's from 2021, so that's what we're trying to
Oh,
update.
okay.
Yeah, that's what the amendment would do is that, to give us a new report. So if you want, I can dig it out and send it to Jude, or Jude, it's on the reports page, or can you, I call it, thank you.
So that's the long and short of our story in terms of farm labor housing. I think there's a continuing need. The initial report, what we've done so far, all the projects completed, we touched a little over 300 farm workers The report suggested the need was around 600. So we may be halfway there, but when you're doing a repair program, after a decade, there may be more repair, there may have been other housing. Wasn't captured by the bridges to health estimate, so. But I think we made more than a dent.
That's very encouraging.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But the other thing I should say to you is, we will fund this with one-time funding. That was available to us, so as that disappears. Question for our board and for you is how much out of our general allocation we focus in this area as opposed to rental housing, home ownership, shelter capacity. All the other things that you would like us to be doing, which are all important as well.
So many things.
Yes.
It's so true.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Seaton? Okay, thank you so much. Oh, yes, go ahead.
You just get that, those people back.
Put it out.
Sure, it's for snapshot kind of,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that would be the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you for having me in right after that wonderful presentation. Like, I have no idea about whether someone drowned or not.
Which side, yeah.
Yeah, you win the argument, Gus?
That was a weekend. Just hard that it's not worth it, as we all know.
Yes, yes, right. Okay, great. Well, so, the next thing on our list is to, have our legislative council go through the amendment that is, we have a new draft up. But, she's not supposed to be here for another 10 minutes. So I think we will, well, and actually, what I would love to do after we walk through the amendments, assuming that there's no further concerns or comments or, questions or anything, if we could do a straw poll on it, I think that would be helpful. So just so you're mentally prepared for that. And then we also are gonna be hearing from, the Lake Champlain Citizens Advisory Board, just an update from them. So, let's take a break. Yeah, let's take a break till 10. Hey. All right, good morning. So the Natural Resources and Energy coming back from a break. We have draft 3.2 of amendment to S 328. Just thank you. Appreciate it. And this is incorporating some of the testimony that we heard the other day from Liz Royer, from Rural Water District, about places that are at least feeling left out of the quadplexing, because their sewer and water is not municipally owned specifically, it's or it's not owned by the town, I should say. And so, how does this apply to fire districts? So the thought was to include fire districts. Because even though they are all technically municipalities. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Chesson. Welcome.
Ellen J. Johnson, Legislative Council. This is a proposed amendment to S 328, draft 3.2, 319, 2026. It is currently from Senators Watson and Hardy. And there are only two sections of this amendment. So the first is amending section 8 of 328, which is the definition of area served by municipal water and sewer infrastructure. So you will see in the first instance of amendment that it is striking out the first half of this definition. So what that will mean is that definition of area served by municipal water and sewer infrastructure will just have one process for determination for what these areas are. So it means an area established by the municipality by ordinance or bylaw. So at the bottom of page 1, where residential connections and expansions are available. The municipal water, page 2, and direct and indirect discharge wastewater systems, or a fire district. And which may exclude all of the following. So the municipality can establish this area by ordinance or bylaw. And it's the areas with the expansion and connections are available to municipal water, the discharge system, or a fire district, and which may exclude flood hazard or inundation areas as established by statute, river corridors or fluvial erosion areas as established by statute, shorelands, areas within the zoning district or overlay district, the purpose of which is natural resource protection, and where year-round residential development is not allowed. So this and all the other criteria on this list are not changing. The change is that the first part of the definition is being removed, and then also adding that fire districts are part of the areas that could be part of this definition.
Yes.
So, yeah, I missed yesterday, apologies for that, so obviously we're getting rid of the whole like. Okay. And can someone just give me a little quick summary on thinking on that?
Yeah, so the idea is that if we try to, because, so just to back up about before we get to the feet.
Thank you.
The Romanet I that is being struck here, and don't correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but my understanding is that that is sort of, that's the area if the municipality has not mapped an area. And arguably those like Romanet I and II could be competing with each other. So let's just have it be established by the municipality and their because they know their capacity, they know their landscape, they know the areas where it makes sense and how that ought to look. If it's served by municipal water or fire district, this is probably a relatively sophisticated municipality, so they probably have the capacity to figure that area out. And most municipalities have already heard that from VLCT. And then the reason to not include feet as a default, in case place hasn't figured, determined that on their own, is because when we contemplated anywhere from 300 feet to 2,000 feet, that even 300 feet could be 300 feet into the next town. It could be 300 feet straight up a cliff. It could be 300 feet into a conservation area. So there's not necessarily any one distance that would make sense necessarily as a default. Let's just ask municipalities to figure out what the area is that makes sense for them.
Got it.
I just figured out, I think, I don't know, answer the question, why striking out section eight, its entirety.
Section I.
Whatever, again, by
Yeah.
striking out section eight. Would we its entirety assume sort of.
This replaces the 2,000 foot thing that
Yeah.
the committee down the hall had. Okay,
Let's look at it from the lines to it, but that's.
okay.
That's where it is.
And that's the only. Wasn't there another thing that we were talking about? I mean, in addition to the farmhouse thing, but,
Oh, there was the land use review board, report that got struck.
yeah, but I felt like there was another measurement thing, but it's been a long week, so I don't know. Maybe it was just that there were, because at one point went to 300 feet and
Oh.
started at 2,000 feet, but it
So-
was just the same issue.
Yeah, at one point we were contemplating, having it change at 2030.
Right, that's what I see.
And
it was a two-part,
right, and
Okay.
VLCT was like, please don't make us do that, because
yeah,
places have already been, they were like that, if you did that, we'd have to go through redoing our bylaws like 3 times. Most places have already done it once, for this purpose, but if it becomes 300 feet or any set feet, we do it again, and then in 2030, we'd have to do it again, and
okay,
we-
so overall, this just makes it simpler for towns.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the other amendment is on page 3, the second still amendment is adding the farm worker housing report, so there's a little more. Language in that section now, so on or before January 15, 2027, VHCP shall provide an update to the farm worker report and needs assessment of 2021. The update shall describe the farm worker housing program established by the board following the initial report, evaluating the program's impact on farm worker housing in Vermont and identify barriers to improving and expanding farm worker housing.
Great.
And that working.
Yeah. Okay, any comments or thoughts about relating this? Yes,
This
yeah,
it's kind of interesting as I've been following through this, all the institutional knowledge you guys have got that I don't have. About this report and I found I put it together with the changes of. When you do it,
great,
Excellent.
that's fabulous.
We all want to sponsor.
Would,
Sponsor.
if we all sponsored it, would do we need the new draft, or, I don't know, okay,
I mean, you could just ask, you could ask Bloomer to do it, or I could do it. So,
Howard,
are you good, you know, on the amendment?
Sure.
Summer good?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Great, and so that sort of makes a straw poll almost irrelevant.
Well, this.
Yeah,
Well, you don't need to straw poll because your committee doesn't have this bill for this amendment. So,
okay. Well, if we're all on the amendment, then I can say it came from all of
Yeah.
us, and that is encouraging, so. Okay, gosh, we are running fast here again today, which is fabulous.
I'm
Yes,
gonna send the draft of all your names on right time.
okay, great, thank you. And so I'm gonna be, I'm slotted to present this to economic development on Tuesday. Okay, so with that, we will take another break until No worries.
We're a lot.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having us this morning. We are a little bit disorganized. We were expecting more people to be here.
Oh,
We
good.
had some confusion about when we were actually meeting. So sorry about that, and sorry that we don't have all the resources that we have available. My name is Brett Callum. I'm a member of the Vermont Citizen Advisory Committee. I retired a number of years ago from the University of Vermont, the Rubenstein School, where I was a professor of environmental sciences and directed the Lake Champlain Sea Grant program. I'm not sure whether you know about it, but it's a NOAA program that focuses on the environment and the economy of Lake Champlain. And on retirement, I asked to be a part of the Citizens Advisory Committee and was appointed. So just a little bit about us. The committee was enacted by legislation in 1989, so we have been around for about 36 years now. We're all volunteers. All of us are appointed by the governor, and we have diverse backgrounds. Bob will tell you about his. Our charge is pretty simple. It's to listen to stakeholders in the Lake Champlain Basin and to report to you on an annual basis on those things that we're hearing as being priorities. So I want to start with our. I'm going to do this old school. There is you're teaching, there is a QR code here that if you want to pull it up on your own phone, you can do that.
I think I might do that.
No,
We're a little more tech savvy than you might think.
Can I just ask a question here?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Are you giving them what he sent me?
yes.
So it's on our website.
It's on the website, yeah. Okay, it's on the website.
Oh, so you should
be. Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it either way.
okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna.
Oh, here it is.
You
Okay.
got it? I'm just gonna
Yeah.
point out this Venn diagram to start out with. This kind of encapsulates our whole philosophy and approach. So what we're all after is a healthy living. Kind of the way that we approach this is there's three broad areas, the big circles there, healthy ecosystems, climate resilience, and clean water. Those things intersect with each other. So where healthy ecosystems and clean water come together, we're improving the biodiversity of our systems. Where healthy ecosystems and climate resilience intersect is in the area of restoration, restoring our natural assets. And where clean water and climate resilience intersect is watershed management. And when all those things come together, then we're approaching, a healthy lake. That's what we're after. And I want to say from the outset that although our charge is to look at the future of Lake Champlain, Lake Champlain drains about half of the total area of the state of Vermont. The things that we advocate for, though, good for the entire state of Vermont. So this is not just about Lake Champlain, although that's our charge. It's something that is beneficial to the entire state. So in this action plan, we have four major priorities. That's on page 2. There's a box on page 2 if you have that available to you. I'm going to talk to the first one and then turn it over to Bob to talk to the next two, and then I'll come back to talk about the last one. Those four priorities are to advance flood mitigation and climate resilience, to address water contaminants, to invest in aquatic invasive species management, and to ensure equitable public access to waterways. These kind of broad categories haven't changed that much over the last few years. The broad categories are ones that we keep bringing out. The kind of the underlying bills that you are considering and programs that you see occurring are changing, and so we highlight a few of those things. So let me just start with the first priority of flood resilience. I'm sure you're all aware that Lake Champlain is a big lake The area that drains into it is even bigger, and as a matter of fact, it's remarkably bigger. The ratio of the land area to the lake area is about 19:1. And that's the largest ratio, or a large ratio for a lake that size of any place in the world. Just by comparison, the Great Lakes, that ratio is only 3 or 4 to 1. So what that means is that we have 19 acres of land that's going into every acre of water. So it's a lot of land that's delivering things, water, sediment, nutrients, pollutants, to the lake. And compounding that challenge is a change in climate where things are intensifying in one year or another. In the last 15 years, the Lake Champlain Basin has been impacted by all 25 FEMA declaration events. In fact, we are the 7th highest in the nation with respect to those declarations. That includes the floods in 2003 and 2004. As I'm sure you guys all know, the 2003 floods cost upwards of $1 billion in damages and response, recovery, and support for social support costs. There was a UVM study in 2022 that estimated that just in general, a 100-year flood would cost the state of Vermont about $750 million every one of those floods. And if we look out to the next 100 years, we might be facing $5.2 billion in losses. At the other end of the spectrum, we have droughts. My understanding is that you heard from my colleague Leslie this morning about the droughts in 2025, record-setting low levels in Lake Champlain, $60 million worth of lost revenue to the agricultural sector in the state. So these extreme weather events are affecting us now, and they're getting worse. And we have a administration in Washington that is not really friendly to helping us with foster these. So these are daunting challenges. But I want to flip the narrative here a little bit. So that 19:1 ratio means that we have big impacts on the lake, but flip side of that is that if we do good things on the land, the chances of getting rapid recovery are higher than might be the case in other places. So in the area of flood mitigation, we've identified 5 high-level opportunities, and those opportunities are outlined, I think, on page 2, beginning on the bottom of page 2 and then page 3 of that document. I'll just quickly paraphrase them. The first of them is to restore and conserve headwaters, corridors, floodplains, wetlands, soils, riparian buffers, and so forth. And the rationale for this is that natural assets like that are effective and far less expensive than hard infrastructure, great infrastructure, and so forth. The second is to invest in our agency staff and empower them to work across agencies and with outside organizations. I'll point to a document that you may have seen, probably seen from Julie Moore back in April about gaps in funding, kind of unfunded mandates for A&R, totaling about $500,000, I think, in various places. We need funding for the staff and the programs that are addressing these flood issues. The third opportunity is to support funding for research and demonstration projects that are designed to restore natural streaming processes in the lake. It's great to be able to point to research that was done in California or in Nevada or Florida or whatever, but having research that is specific to Vermont, that Vermonters will say, okay, I get that, is really important. The fourth is to invest in sustainable agriculture, forest and working lands initiatives. Agriculture is the biggest source of phosphorus to the lake. And we've done that for a while and we're addressing that. Forests, it turns out, are also a large source, not because every acre is a big source, but we have a lot of acres of forest, so it ends up being a big source to the lake. So addressing, investing in sustainable agriculture and forestry is important.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so how do forests, Brett, send phosphorus to the lake? How's
The same processes of erosion, there's a lot of forest roads that run through the forest.
Yeah.
Small culverts, they're not well maintained, there's a lot of sediment that gets delivered and that eventually moves downstream to the lake.
phosphorus?
Phosphorus is natural, phosphorus is, it's a natural compound, it's everywhere. And it's not that every acre in the forest is a problem, but we have so
many acres,
forests. We have
90
land. But in the Missisquoi Bay, for example, the Missisquoi River, forestry is a big problem of what gets delivered to the lake. The last one is to finally, to invest in, public and private infrastructure to meet modern standards. A lot of our waste treatment facilities are woefully, out of date, and need upgrading. And interestingly, although agriculture is the largest total source of phosphorus to the lake, on an acre for acre basis, urban areas are the largest source per acre. So it is not trivial what's being delivered from the only 6% of the basin that is developed. So the sorts of things that we want to see continued supported are initiatives like the clean water initiatives associated with the LIPSHIP and PMBL. The ANR Tactical Basin Planning Program and initiatives around it. The Vermont Resilience Implementation Strategy and the Vermont Climate Action Plan, those are all things that are helping to support what's going on in Lake Champlain. Just mention that the Farm Security Act, which I think it passed last week, right?
Yes.
We're tremendously supportive of that, so appreciative of that passing. That's great.
We need to get funding for it, so if you talk to the appropriations committee,
Okay,
make sure you ask them to put some funds in it, otherwise it won't get off the ground.
okay.
Well, and just as a flag in that, I do intend to have a letter coming from this committee. Oh, it is.
It's great.
That is great.
Congratulations.
It's funny, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I never thought about it.
Just a minute.
Of course, there's an guy. Yeah.
So funny, mine never went off.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, for
Yes, go.
another time, like, I didn't know you had that position. So make sure we do. Well, make sure we know, when you said you're supportive of the.
Farms, security.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, like, I didn't know that,
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
so make sure, as things like that happen.
Well, I'll give you two other examples.
Before we know,
Okay,
because that'll help us decide how to.
Well, and just to finish the thought that I mean, you can probably guess what I was gonna say, we're gonna have a letter that comes from this committee to the appropriations committee. And so we should flag this as an item that maybe we want to include.
Yeah.
So, sorry, please continue.
so we're very supportive of the Flood Safety Act, Act 121, which is passed, but I understand has funding gaps, and actually my number of 500,000 was about that, not like ANR's funding gaps. But that there are funding gaps in the Flood Safety Act, and so we're very supportive of that act and ensuring that it is fully funded. And thirdly, the House Transportation Committee, H 467, we're very supportive of it. I understand there's been no action on it, but the provisions in it that would require the agency of transportation to be forward thinking rather than reactive in the way that they operate are things that we are very supportive of. So those are examples of bills that we are very supportive of.
How about I don't know what the number is, the salt bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
very, so, that is a great segue. I'll
Okay.
now turn to my colleague to address.
Actually, before you go, I just wanna make sure that I'm capturing all this. So Flood Safety Act,
Yes,
Farm Security Bill,
yes.
and there was another about AOT, but what was the name of that one?
There,
It's a
well,
bill, but it didn't move anywhere.
it's not a bill per se, but
Oh, okay.
that. Anytime there's something that it's addressing a party's need to have staff or programs addressing flooding, the rivers program in particular. Those are things that we want to see supported.
And then you mentioned H 467.
467, there's a transportation bill that I understand is stalled. I don't think there's been any actions on last year. Yeah, so that's it.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Bob Fisher. I'm the water quality superintendent for South Burlington, and I live in Barrytown. I used to be the chief operator of the Montpelier wastewater facility 10+ years ago.
Which is how I originally met.
That is correct. Giving tours of the facility, and I still give tours of all the facilities. So to go backwards really quickly, as Brett noticed, we were 1989. It was federal legislation. There are two others. This is a tri-mayor bid. We are also in Quebec and New York. So there are 3 CACs, and the original language is quite strong. It kind of, we can like call anyone we want and etc. It sort of got, what happened is Senator Leahy got a lot of money for the basin program and sort of supplanted this sort of rebate. But this is where it came from. We have numerous members on here. Eric Clifford has been on as long as me, 16, 17 years, a dairy farmer. We have engineers, we have Lori Fisher. We have all sorts of, that's a fairly large community. We have 2 senators and we have we have Senator Bullock and Senator Brock, and we have Representative Odie and Representative Rennie on our committee. And as we said, which I understand, what you always want to hear is actionable items. What can you give me a bill, give me a number, what are you for or against? We're a fairly disparate group that moves fairly slowly. And we listen to the public and kind of bring it up. But I'm here to talk about contaminants, first of all. Excuse me, would be so chloride. Chloride's a big issue. Just like there's a phosphorus DL, there's already 5 impaired streams. There's Sunnybrook and Colchester, we have potash issues. So there's going to be a TMD that's already, I was a federal fishery biologist for many years. There's probably going to be a federal TMDL coming down, which is the same thing. It's going to drag everyone kicking and screaming to do something, more or less. Salt is just like phosphorus. It's there, it's legacy salt. What do you do? Also, I'm a ski coach at Killington that drives an hour plus every down 107, except for the year when it wasn't there. For the last 26 years to Killington, so I prefer not to slam into things. But nonetheless, we have to reduce salt usage. A lot of it is private people, you own a mall, somebody slips, they sue you. So we're trying to push along like the New Hampshire model, more or less, where the state takes on some liability with trading to help, reduce salt usage, because it's one of those things that's kind of coming, more or less, assuming that EPA is gonna do what EPA normally does in the past, then it has to be addressed. So it's really not an option. And just like everything else, there's no money. The money's gone, and everyone here is the same. I go to Water Week in Washington, and I generally walk in with Senator Sanders, and we're not like the firefighters or the nurses that are here for money. Yeah, we are. No, we're here for the infrastructure. I obviously am very supportive of our infrastructure. On one of the large wastewater facilities, we basically put out drinking water, and when the river turns chocolate, there goes basically all my work. PFAS is a big issue. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. As I was explaining to the other senator here, that we currently land apply. There's only really 2 methods in Vermont: land to get rid of your biosolids at the end. You can either land apply or you can ship them somewhere and into the landfill. Neither one's a great option, but we're doing it in a 5% mix with V-Trans. We have to test. Vermont has the most restrictive rules in the nation. Virtually everyone else is going with the Michigan, Ohio rules, other than Maine, which can. But we are #1 for the lowest numbers. I just did mine yesterday. And we're way below background levels. It's a 5% mix. We're putting it where people won't go, along roadways, long runways. And if you don't do it, then you're gonna have to report that phosphorus. And it's the same thing if I have to go to Coventry or Broward, there's gonna be a ton of greenhouse gases, plus the PFAS actually off gases from Coventry. Not to mention the methane. I saw a study on that. Yes, I'm not gonna make comments on that, but yes. Yeah, not only we're doing the methane, they're capturing the methane, they're trying to, use it, it's still, it's a landfill. And the main issue is biosalts are 20-some%, it's like mud, and it's structural stability, landfill, keeps doing it. And some places are, so it's gonna be huge, and plus you still need that phosphorus and whatnot for fertilizer, so you gotta import it. So there's no easy solutions anywhere. So basically beyond that, I should probably pivot then, we're running out of time to, aquatic invasives.
Yeah.
Aquatic invasives, and I think Brett can pull the numbers off his head more than I can. What is the amounts? Yeah. They're all around us. There's far more up in the Richelieu and up above us, and certainly into the locks. The main issue is coming from the lock. And the round goby gets in, fishing is a huge industry here and all sorts of things that's gonna cause, billions of dollars in damage. And it's very hard, once you get in, and ounce prevention is worth a pound here, you can never, I remember in California, there was a large lake when I was special fish biologist north of my course, and someone decided to bring northern pike there. Great, because they wanted to fish that, that's great. But it also released to the American River, so which would get down, and so they wrote down the whole thing. There were people lost their entire livelihoods, there were fishermen, and after 2 years, they went back and all they found were a couple pikes, so they wiped out everything but the pikes. They're very hard to get rid of. So, any sort of money, and it's one of those things that's also like, millweed and whatnot. The state will put money, they'll be kind of holding steady, and then there'll be a funding gap for a year or something, and then it spreads, and then you kind of hold steady again, and you maybe get a little, and then there's a funding gap or something. So, really the solution, which they've worked on is really mostly through the canal, trying to drain that one down and a boat lifts, I guess, for their relatives. Okay, I guess also the public access and recreation.
I can do that.
Sure. I'll check that one.
And just recognizing that we are,
Yeah, we're out of time.
we're gonna be,
And then our last one.
okay.
It's our last one.
Okay,
We have about 50 invasive species that have got the interlinked. But just outside, we have connections, of course, to the St. Lawrence River, to the Hudson River. There are over 100 other invasive species just kind of poised to come in, and so to Bob's point, and ounce prevention is better than trying to cure it later. Our last point here is about public access. The state has about a $1.5 billion a year outdoor recreation industry, and so public access to the lake is extremely important. Actually, I think we lead second in the nation. Why? We're in the tourism industry and how important it is. However, we have probably on the south end of the lake with very little access to the south end of the lake, and so we just want to put it on your radar. We're not aware of any bill moving through to do something, but we want to promote the idea that there needs to be additional access to the southern end of the lake. We need to create opportunities for marginalized groups to be able to have access to the lake, so that we have an entire community that is empowered to use it and appreciates it and wants to support the chamber. And with that, we have delivery. We'll stop.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, right,
Thank
without
you all,
being.
thank you all for your work. I mean, our work is,
Trash